Ooh, Watem here, welcome back to some more Umineko When Seagulls Cry. Before I continue, I have changed voice settings slightly. I've increased the gain, so let me know if there's any issues with that. And without any further ado, let us continue. Is there a 19th person or not? Does the witch exist or not? 19 greater than x greater than 18. Which exists somewhere in that x. Dun dun dun! I wasn't expecting the shadow that time. It's bigger than the Steam version. The uncomfortable atmosphere continued even after those two left. I was thick with the idea that simply thinking about the culprit's identity would be the same as deciding whom to suspect. It had begun to feel like discussion of the case was itself taboo, so no one mentioned the case, at least out loud. However, those thoughts were what filled us. All that we couldn't say aloud made our heads feel like they were going to explode. So, at least on the outside, the parlour had once again regained its calm mood. Everything was left unsettled.
少しだけ雨足が弱まった気がするね。
まだいっぱい降ってるよ。おお。
仮にやんだってこの島には船がねえんだしな。船が明日すぐに来てくれりゃいいんだがよ。洋館バカンさんもうお腹いっぱいだぜ。
母さん、明日船はいつ来るのかな。
本来なら帰りの船は今日の3時に来てくれることになっていました。先方も台風が過ぎてから出直すと電話をしてくれたでしょうが、あいにく電話は普通ですから。でも向こうも子供の使いではありません。客人の方々の送迎目的だと教えてありますから。おそらく明日の朝一番で、多分9時頃に来てくれるでしょう。
It's completely black outside. When I looked at the clock, I realized that it was just past 7. I was starting to get hungry. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was cooking enthusiastically. She had laid out a variety of dishes. While they didn't match the level of good, artful cooking, still quite gorgeous. It was an act of kindness from Kumasawa, who was trying to enliven everyone's low spirits with some food. Kumasawa wasn't nearly as talented as a professional cook like Gorda. She was far from unskilled. On the contrary, since she had been brought up in a fishing village, the simple food she created was sometimes highly praised. Kanon arranged for food. Kumasawa had finished creating on plates under her direction. Kanon also helped in the kitchen sometimes, but since he was rarely placed in that role, he was slightly awkward, even though he tried his best. Self-conscious about the fact that he couldn't cleverly arrange the food, Kanon's expression darkened slightly. But Kumasawa smiled, so everything was fine.
きれいに盛り付けられてますよ。カノン君もお上手ですよ。
シャノン姉さんだったらもっと綺麗に。
Kanon stopped arranging the food for a bit and hung his head. Shannon was the only one who has always assisted Kumasawa in her cooking. Well, Shannon was for one. Tonight it was Kanon doing it instead. And, as he remembered Shannon's face, entered. Genji spoke kindly to Kanon as he advanced to pawn. I'm guessing they're playing chess in the kitchen. Anjo had escaped from the parlour once the mood had grown sour, and Genji had become his opponent in a game of chess upon Nanjo's request.
はい。今は忘れます。
それがいいだろう。
Genji purposefully refrained from facing Kanon as he spoke. He did so because he understood that it might make things tougher in Kanon. Noticed that someone was looking at his eyes. Anjo also understood that, and held back any thoughtless words.
金蔵さんもどこへ行かれたんでしょうな。ご無事だと いいのですが。
わかりません。ただ全ては親方様が望まれ仕組まれたことのように思っています。それを邪推することは親方様にお仕えする家具には過ぎたことです。
Is the doctor going to be informed about the whole, like, or re-informed about the witch's epitaph, perhaps?
源氏さんは怖くないのですか？私には今夜まだ何か良くないことが起こるような気がして怖いのです。
怖いことなど何も。私はただ後ろ宮家にお仕えするだけですので。
Andrew sighed through his notes and made a carefully considered move. Andrew was very slightly dubious. Could Genji possibly be thinking that he'd be left out of this? Couldn't even imagine what was happening inside this mansion. But he definitely couldn't deny the possibility that Kinzo had devised something. Likened this island to chess, Kinzo had opened the game. As a result, 6 pieces had been defeated. Could it be that Genji was calm because he believed he alone was on the outside of the chessboard? Safe. Nope. Genji knows very well that he is on the chessboard and could be sacrificed. But, oh, what is he to do? Nanjo thought about it. Isn't everyone just a piece on this chessboard, lined up equally, without any expectations? Indeed, I believe Kinzo thinks of himself as just another piece on that chessboard. Wasn't even Genji, who gained more of Kinzo's trust than anyone? No, he was confident of his position as Kinzo's only close friend. Just another one of the pieces laid out on the chessboard.
源氏さん、私は今夜が本当に怖いのです。無事に明日の朝を迎えられることを心より願っています。
Guest room everyone to the Yoshi moved into had originally been built to house guests before the guest house construction. Just until a few years ago, they had stayed in these rooms every family conference and were very familiar with them. This room was just like a room at a hotel, with a bedroom and a bathroom. So, you still shut in. Far more comfortable than the parlor.
やっぱり家族だけだとリラックスできるな。他のみんなも客室にこもって鍵をかけてりゃええんや。
夏日姉さんが客間を出るなって威張り散らしてるんだもん。誰も口答えなんてできないでしょ。あの人ずーっと冷や飯を食ってきたから兄さんが死んでやっと天下が来たって張り切ってんのよ。まったくずうずうしいったらあるしな。
まあそう言うな。夏日さんもあれで結構頑張っとるんやで。お前もそう突っかからんでもええやないか。さっきのレシートの件もあそこまでは言い過ぎやで。
だってん。
Are we now going to witness? The second twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the two who are close. Ah, something I've forgotten about until just now. It's those who remain shall tear apart the two who are close. How so? Yeah. Off of the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. Gouge head and kill and all that, but those who remain shall tear apart the two who are close, and those who remain shall praise my noble name.
あそこで言わなかったらもう言うタイミングがないんだもん。
Eva, sulking cutely and looking at the television, sat alongside Hideyoshi. who was lying on the bed.
でも、こうして二人きりになるのはずいぶん久しぶりよね。
そうやな。思えばわしもお前も老けたもんや。ジョージが生まれてから何もかもがあっという間や。
本当にあっという間よ。子供を作るの焦りすぎたかしら。
His eyes looked like they were staring off into the distance. Yes, she had thought of it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Her older brother Kraus had been unable to father a child for quite some time. 6 years passed after his marriage to Natsuhi without any signs of pregnancy, which didn't please Kinzo at all. For herself, they'd thought that. Since her name would be moved outside the Shiromiya register when she got married anyway, it didn't matter whether a successor to the headship was born or not. Then, one day, had a heavenly revelation. Maybe it was the whisperings of the devil that she had listened to in her. She could give birth to a successor first. Wouldn't she be able to remain in the Shiromiya register? Isn't it well? Might she have a chance to inherit the Shiromiya family herself? She proposed this to Hideyoshi. He had approved of it instantly. This wasn't because Hideyoshi also had greedy thoughts. For Hideyoshi, no close relatives, it was a chance for him to feel once more of a long-forgotten thing called. So when they got married, he hadn't fussed over which last name they were to keep, and had quickly agreed to have his name entered into the Shiromiya register. It hadn't been easy to persuade Kinzo, but as his daughter, Ever knew Kinzo's personality well. So, by choosing the time when Kinzo was most dissatisfied with Natsuhi, she was magnificently able to make him accept Hideyoshi as an adopted son-in-law. Looking at Hideyoshi, who had achieved success after starting from nothing, Kinzo might have seen a little bit of himself. He quickly grew to like Hideyoshi and approved his transfer into the Shiromiya register. George would eventually become the successor to the Shiromiya family. He had raised him strictly with that purpose in mind. He'd been worth their while and had grown into a fabulous young man who wouldn't disappoint no matter where he went. That was why he had not been permitted to fall in love with a servant like Shannon. So when she'd learned that Shannon was dead and the engagement was now invalid, but part of her had still been shocked by the gruesome. Part of her had also been relieved that her dear George wouldn't be stolen by some servant girl.
私、クラウス兄さんのことが昔から嫌いだったわ。偉そうで威張ってて。自分がやがては当主になるのだと自慢してて。だから、それに一矢報いてやりたかった。でも、それは子供の頃の感情なのよ。でもその感情は、結局、自分の人生のほとんどを支配した。それだけならまだいい。その感情は、あなたやジョージまで巻き込んで振り回してしまった。
エヴァ、備え自分を責めるな。
Hideyoshi got up and held Eva's shoulder. She could feel a warm understanding from him.
わしはな、自分の人生はもうとっくに折り返しに入っとる。でもな、今日までの生活を後悔したことは一度もないで。一度もや。エヴァと一緒で他の男どもじゃ味わえん楽しい人生になったと思っとる。戦争で身寄りを失ったわしにもう一度家族のぬくもりを教えてくれた。だから後宮の家には感謝しとるし、わしの唯一の家だと思っとる。わしとお前が歩んできた人生にな、無駄。今日までほんまに楽しい人生やったで。
ありがとう、あなた。
Eva hung her head, burying her face in Hideyoshi's chest. Probably, No one in the parlor could even imagine that this side of ever existed.
感謝するのはわしや。今日までお前と一緒にいて後悔した日なんてあらへん。
私もよ。あなたと一緒になれて。よっ。
ジョージももう立派な大人や。わしが見張ってなくてもしっかり仕事ができる一人前や。で、正月あたりをのんびりモルジブあたりで過ごさんか。わしら二人水いらずや。
いやよ。毎年年賀状の返礼で寝る暇もないとか言ってるじゃない。
次の正月だけはなしや。年賀状はみん黙って下のお年玉くじだけチェックするんや。今年はカラーテレビくらい当てたいで。
やだ。モルジブでお年玉くじのチェックなんてしたくない。
じゃあそいつもなしや。水いらずのんびりでジョージが生まれる直前の新婚時代の続きをちょいとしてみんか。
うん。それならいいわね。
モルジブはええとこらしいで。なんもない島に美しいサンゴ礁と水上コテージが並んでてな。
新婚時代の続きっていつからなの？
仕事納めしたらすぐや。旅行店に聞いてみんとわからんが、多分大晦日前には。
いや、今すぐ。
Ever nagged at his lips in a peevish yet flirtatious manner. The only sounds that filled the room were the distant voice of the announcer on the news, which Hideyoshi had left on, the obnoxious pounding of the rain against the window. There was a knock on the door and Genji-san entered.
奥様、お夕食の準備が整いました。お食事はまたこちらでよろしいですか？
ええ、ここへ運ばせなさい。南條先生はまだ厨房にいるのですか？
はい。次の一手を熟考したいとおっしゃっております。ご安心を。他の使用人たちとご一緒です。
源氏さんはじいさまの相手ができるくらいチェスが強いもんな。南條先生よりも強いらしいぜ。
そうなんだ。昔相手をしてもらったことがあるけどあれは勝たせてくれたのかな。
マリア、もうすぐ飯だそうだぜ。しかしよく一日中テレビを見ていて飽きねえな。
うん、いつもテレビいっぱい見てるから平気。
マリアちゃんはテレビっ子なんだね。
食事だから机の上を片付けないとダメだぜ。
Earlier, we had torn several pages out of Maria's notebook. It's now a mess where everyone had been drawing together. Jessica began cleaning that up quickly. Still, everyone here really can draw. I'd never guessed.
源氏、エヴァさんたちにもせめて食事くらい一緒にしないかとお声をかけなさい。
What are the chances you think that they're already dead?
どうせ断るでしょうが。
かしこまりました。
お父様の次はエヴァさんですか。つくづく後ろ宮家の食卓には全員が揃いませんね。
Natsui felt her headache start throbbing again, lightly held her temples. The distance from the kitchen to the parlour wasn't that great. Genji had gone and come back by himself. The guest room was a little further away. Natsui had warned him to avoid being alone whenever possible. Just now, Nanja had admonished him, saying it would be better if he held a little more concern for his safety. Kanon accompanied Genji, and the two of them went to visit Eva and Hideyoshi in their guest room. Have his scratches there before? Probably.
エヴァ様、秀吉様、お夕食の準備が整いました。
He waited for a short while for them to come out, but there was no response.
源氏様これは
Cannon pointed under the door. A Western-style envelope had been inserted under it. Normally when something was inserted this way, it would be interpreted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. So, since this might be a private note meant for Ever and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Cannon and Genji were supposed to take interest in. This Western envelope was one of Kinzo's. The same kind as the one Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with.
間違いない親方様の封筒だ
あるいは
Even though this was one of Kinzo's envelopes, the letter Maria had read aloud the previous night hadn't come from Kinzo. Genji continued knocking a little harder and called out in a loud voice.
エヴァ様源氏でございますいらっしゃいますかお返事をお願いいたしますエヴァ様
There was no response from inside. Sometimes, when the servants went to call some guests for a meal, the guests would be sleeping so deeply. Times like this, the letter would stick a letter in the door to show that it was time to come out, and leave the guests be. But despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Eva's name. However, so Cannon stuck his ear up to the door, held his breath, and listened for any sounds coming from inside.
テレビの音らしきものがでも気配が感じられませんお部屋は空っぽかも
Genji took out a handkerchief, being careful not to touch it with his bare hands. Gently pulled out the envelope that had been stuck under the door. It was sealed with deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Shiro family's head ring.
エヴァ様エヴァ様どうかお返事をもうお部屋にはいらっしゃいませんか
There was still no answer. There was a chance that those two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home Eva had grown up in. There was plenty of reason to think that she had gone out on a casual stroll. Genji groped around in his pocket and pulled out the bundle of keys, which contained the key that would open the guest room.
源氏様
Cannon also understood what this meant. They would sometimes unlock the door so they could go in and do things like make the bed, but only after they made sure the guests were out. To unlock the door for any other reason, and especially to do so when there was a chance the guests hadn't given permission, they might still be in there, was an action unbecoming of a servant. Genji had decided. Aren't they also locked up with chains from the inside? The only problem had been that his knock hadn't received a reply. He wouldn't have gone this far. The envelope on the door was doubtlessly one of Kinzo's, or rather, one of the western envelopes of the Yoshiromiya family head. After last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kinzo. This letter had been sent by someone else.
エヴァ様申し訳ございませんお部屋を失礼させていただきます
After giving that final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys from the bundle into the keyhole. There was the sound of the door unlocking, and, after slowly turning the knob, he slowly started opening the door. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? They'll be in the room. The sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside, so it also proved that they were in the room. The sound of the voices in the TV seeped out of the room. Lights, the chain, and the TV. All of these things made it clear that they were in the room. There's no sign of them. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack of the door. There was no answer.
源氏様いかがしますか
As part of their job, servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion. They had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by with a chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. Creepy chill had already rushed up their backs. Cannon held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door. Even so, he was not able to sense anyone.
私は奥様をお呼びしてくる。カノンはチェーンの切断を。
I think it would be best to wait for, like, have more than just Natsuhi there. So then you've got more, like, people who can verify that your claims are true. And wait until then to cut the chain. As Kun hurried away to get a cousin call, Genji called him to stop.
待てカノン。厨房に戻り、熊沢と行動するように。断じて一人で行動してはならんぞ。
はい、かしこまりました。
It looked like Cannon was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. But Genji had said it out of wariness. He didn't care what happened to himself, but in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Cannon. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was piling food on the serving cart. Nanjo was waiting for Genji, apparently wanting to show him a move he'd finally thought up that might turn the tables on him. Genji's appearance immediately told him that something was wrong.
おや、どうしましたか、源氏さん。
南條先生、申し訳ありませんが、この勝負は一度中断させてください。カノンはチェーンを頼む。熊沢、食事の配膳は一時中断し、カノンと同行するよう。私は奥様のところへ行く。南條先生もご一緒に。
何かあったんですか。
Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
熊沢さん、申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Kumasawa said almost exactly the same thing as Nanjo. Unable to take in the situation, and chased after Cannon, who had flown out into the hallway. Taking Kumasawa with him, Cannon went to a storage room and looked through the tools packed in toolboxes hanging all walls, trying to find something that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか。私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ。
ドアチェーンをどうしてそんなことをするんですか。
エヴァ様たちのお部屋にチェーンが中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
And took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain and Ever and Tadayoshi not answering were connected. She did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これなら多分。
And then took down a very large wire cutter that had been hanging on the wall. It's called a cutter, but maybe it was easy to understand if we said it was shaped like a large pair of pliers. Cannon remembered once being warned that this dangerous tool could easily cut through one of your fingers. Cannon took that and rushed up the stairs. He already knew instinctively. She'd fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Perhaps it was already...
待ってください、カノンさん。
早く。
Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both hands on her knees. Cannon changed his grip on the wire cutters and looked up at the door. He let out an "ah," struck speechless. Oh?
何ですかこれは。
Now presumably that wasn't there before. Oh. You put it there. But we don't know yet if anyone else is outside the parlour, so we'll have to wait for that. Kumasawa screamed weakly, her face pallid. That was no surprise, because right there, on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of a rose garden at the store, was another eerie shape drawn with blood-like paint. However, it would be odd to call this one a magic circle. Yes, it's more like a doorway. It was unlike what most people would expect. It wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside it. A slightly more complicated geometrical shape. However, those strange characters filling in the gaps, which weren't from the alphabet, were the same kind as the one that magic circle with a shutter. The thing that had Canon struck speechless wasn't how eerie the magic circle was. It's that something like this hadn't been there a short while ago. Or here. First, he had taken a trip back to the kitchen. After that, he'd gone to a storage room to grab a tool and headed right back. Put those together, it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? As though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding. As everyone's settling, the vertical line, the red line slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. Kumasawa's knees gave way. She sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, Canon surely would have wanted to.
ベアトリーチェ様。
ベアトリーチェ様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
Canon gulped and readied the wire cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle. He really didn't want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get up close, he wouldn't be able to cut the chain. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again. But after gathering his courage, he went even closer, putting the wire cutter up against the chain. He then pressed with all his strength, managing to cut through the chain far more easily than he anticipated. The cut chain fell into separate parts, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth.
カノンさん、足元に封筒が。しかもこれは親方様のもの。
Looked like Kumasawa had also noticed the Western envelope at the bottom of the door. The sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Canon hesitated for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the room. But he eventually decided on fulfilling his original purpose. And before we see exactly what happens inside the room, I am going to end it there for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know any feedback you have in the comments. Let me know if there's any issue with the phone audio. Until next time, see ya.